I graduated from engineering college, and then I worked as accountant, barista, business developer, client service manager, content creator, motion designer, operations manager, social media specialist, store manager, and video editor. And I currently help online businesses with video content. And let me just say this, the education system isn't broken. It's actually working exactly as it was built. The problem is that it was built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. And you will know exactly what I mean by the end of this video. Because just in a few minutes, I'll be mentioning a dozen things that are wrong with the education system. But before we get into that, we should understand a few things. Because right now, as we speak, the highest percentage of humanity is busy with schools and college. So it's worthwhile from time to time to stop and see whether or not universities are still worth it, or are there any better alternatives. So get your favorite drink and join me on this ride. Okay, so first things first, education itself as a concept is a great thing that humanity needs. We all should be learning new stuff all our lives. But the criticism here is directed at the education system, with schools and especially universities and the degree-chasing culture around it all. You see, education was supposed to be a path to a stable and fulfilling life. But for most people nowadays, that promise is broken and is not being delivered. According to the United States Department of Labor, 42% of recent US college graduates are currently underemployed, which means that they're working jobs that don't even require a college degree. And the thing is, when people start underemployed, they tend to continue that way, save mentioning the rising unemployment rates and the internship competition, which has doubled. Education was supposed to prevent such outcomes, not cause it. Now, before I get to the juice, in order to understand where did this shift happen, I'll have to talk just a little bit about the history. The first thing that resembled nowadays universities started in medieval Europe, not as institutions handing out credentials, but as guilds, which were organized groups of people sharing the same trade. Back then, a degree was earned through direct mentorship and demonstrated skills. It wasn't some ticket to a career. It was a license to prove that you've mastered your craft well enough to be able to pass it on to someone else. So that's how it was. And this remained the case up until after World War II, when countries suddenly needed a huge workforce, and they needed it fast and in high numbers. So they basically mass-produced degrees in order to continuously be able to feed more and more people into this booming corporate 9-to-5 kind of economy. With all these factories and new industries, they really needed that. So that's exactly the world that this system was built for. And you can see that it could work well, which it did. But the problem is that world is pretty much gone now. Jobs aren't guaranteed by degrees, and they aren't stable career ladders. So basically everything has changed about the world, but somehow the education system remains the same. And that's how a system that was built to prove craft mastery slowly turned into a system that sells the credential itself as the product. So now I think we're set up to go through the dozen points that I think are wrong with the current education system, starting from the psychological damage. So the next 6 points are about the mindset damage that has been done to all of us due to the education system, which most of us haven't even fixed yet. So make sure that you lock in. The golden rule to become a successful student is do not make mistakes. Like in school, if you make mistakes, give wrong answers, fail exams, and so on, you get penalized so heavily that you learn to look at mistakes as if they were a bad thing. Now you may be saying, wait a minute, how come mistakes aren't a bad thing? Well, they ain't. That's exactly why I mentioned in this point. This is one of the mindset shifts that we need to make in order to fix our mindsets after going through the education system. Because if you look at mistakes as a bad thing, it builds the mindset of avoiding risk and taking the safe path, instead of making mistakes and learning from them, which is how it actually works in the real world. Look at all the successful people. They've all made tons of mistakes and failed multiple times. This dangerous mindset of being afraid of being wrong is the opposite of what building anything real requires. In real life, you make mistakes, you learn, you get better. You make mistakes, you learn, you get better. schools optimize for compliance. You raise your hand to get a chance to say your opinion. You memorize what you are handed. And I mean, think about the questions. There are multiple choice questions, which limits the student's thinking to a few given options. And you have true or false questions, which promote a false black or white mindset. This process secretly kills independent thinking and sets the kids up for a world where questions have one correct answer and problems have one clear solution. However, in real life, most problems don't even have one clear solution. Real life isn't black or white. In fact, I would go as far as saying that real life doesn't even have pure white or pure black. And I would love to explain that, but we will need to continue. Here's the messed up part. Even if you're a perfect student like I was, you're still not safe, because after years of being told that if you study and work hard and pass exams and whatever, you will be rewarded with success, this builds a dangerous sense of entitlement, like an unconscious belief that the world owes you something just because you did what you were told, which, spoiler alert, it doesn't. The sooner you learn that you aren't entitled for anything, the better your chances of achieving success, and education just delays that realization. For generations, there has been this narrow definition of success: get high grades, get a prestigious degree, and work a job, leaving those who think differently to feel like failures before they've even started. And it's not only the parents' fault. The system itself is clearly incentivized to push this in order to constantly feed itself with more humans. This negative perception about outsiders that is led by the education system goes even further. It promotes the stigma of looking down at skilled trades such as electricians and plumbers and so on, who could easily be more successful nowadays on every front than those who have actually gone through the education system. But hey, they didn't graduate college, so they aren't really successful, are they? Did you just try to get help? That's cheating! You see, the work that directly relates to your success as a student are exams. And the way you do this is usually by sitting alone and writing on a piece of paper without engaging with anyone, which obviously builds the mindset of working alone. While in real life, the most successful people win because they know how to work with others. They know how to build teams, how to delegate tasks, and how to lead. And these skills not only aren't built at school or college, they aren't even allowed. This same mindset that shames asking for help and promotes doing it all alone is what follows many people into adulthood and slows down their entire life trajectory by making them try to figure everything out on their own instead of just getting help from people who have already done it. So my advice is that if you didn't used to cheat at school, good for you. But now you can just get help. Now, this is my favorite bad thing about the education system. Hear me out. School and college run on a learn first and then do model, which means that you spend years learning about random stuff before you get to apply any of it. And that's just not how the real world works. Out here, you take action first and then you learn and improve as you go. The people who are winning right now are the ones who operate like that, not spending years sitting in a room and getting lectured first, or going on days of only reading books or watching YouTube tutorials or whatever without taking any action while the opportunities are passing them by. So this is a huge mindset shift that most of us still need to make. No more learning and then doing. You learn as you go. Most of the stuff that you get taught, you don't end up using like ever. And I know that the logic is that graduates need to be ready for whatever comes their way, so they need to study a bit of everything. But for some reason, even when you work in the field that you studied, you don't end up using a majority of what you studied. At the end of the day, all of this information and data occupy a mental space in our minds. And even worse, it creates a false sense of achievement just because you've learned it, even if you're never gonna be applying any of it. Like even in school, we all learned about all these different dynasties, how fungi reproduce, how concave mirrors reflect light, and basically we memorized all the names of the different layers of Earth's crust and so on. And I don't really think that even 1% of us will ever find any use for any of this in our lives. So what's the point here? Is this a subtle indicator that the time spent in the education system is deliberately being stretched? And who could be benefiting from that, really, if that's the case? Something that the businessmen call increasing the lifetime value of customers. Just after mentioning the next very important points, I'll be talking about who could be actually benefiting from this. So hold on until we get there. And apart from repeatedly teaching all of this irrelevant stuff, if you take a closer look, you will see that the current education doesn't really teach anything about some of the most important stuff and practical skills, such as sales, marketing, how to create and exchange value, financial literacy, how to think independently, and basically how to build wealth. So while you learn how attractive magnets are for 3 years, the other stuff that you will definitely be needing in the real world don't even get taught at school or at college. So you may be asking, what the hell is going on? I mean, if you really think about it, these aren't gaps or accidents. No, these are features of a system that has been designed to produce dependent workers and not independent thinkers, just like I mentioned in the brief history. Another very obvious issue is that curriculums move slowly by design, with all these committees, review cycles, and accreditation, and so on. Meanwhile, the market needs are shifting daily, so by the time a curriculum gets updated, it's already behind. And especially nowadays with AI and all these financial booms, the real world is moving way too fast for the traditional education to be able to catch up. Now let's talk about money. First of all, when I heard about the tuition fees that are paid for college worldwide, I was really shocked, because where I live, most people just attend public universities and only a small minority pay for private ones. And the finances behind this industry, turns out, are just massive. The student loan debt in the United States alone sits at around $1.9 trillion. Yes, I just used the T word. And I'm giving the example of the United States, given that it's the biggest global economy. But the universities there are charging tuition fees between $10,000 to $60,000 for each student per year for a 4-year bachelor's degree. And if you think that this is a normal thing and there's no issue with it, hear me out.
But he willingly sold himself into slavery.
This leads to young people entering their adult life already carrying serious debt, which means that they start their working years operating from a position of financial pressure and urgency, trying to cling to anything available, instead of having the freedom to take risks, to think long-term, or to start families. And I know that there are repayment and forgiveness programs, but I looked into those, and if you do, you'll find out that they are even funnier and more medieval. Also, there's a whole another debate that I won't get into here, talking about whether or not it's legitimate or moral to have literal teenagers sign off on a decision so massive that leads them to take on serious debt that they may not be able to pay off.
Sign away, Charlie. We got nothing to lose.
Another financial issue is that at the same time the tuition fees are increasing, it is getting less and less possible for the graduates to be able to pay it back. Also, since so many people have degrees now, the value that a bachelor's degree has is basically the same value a high school diploma used to have, something referred to as the degree inflation. So financially speaking, going to college is basically you spending years going into more debt than ever to get a degree that's worth less than ever. All the things that I talked about, along with the constant stress of studying irrelevant topics, going through infinite exams, all while getting deeper in debt each year, straight up get you depressed. According to the Healthy Minds study, which was published in September 2025, over a third of college students report moderate to severe symptoms of anxiety and depression. That's 1 in every 3 college students who are dealing with real anxiety and depression, while they're supposed to be living the best youthful years of their lives. And the straw that breaks the camel's back is the timing. The timing, man. Years of a person's most energetic time are being spent optimizing for grades that are almost not related to any real outcomes. You should know that these are years in which humans have the most drive, are the most passionate to build, and have the least to lose. And I mean, even if it works out, even if they become successful middle-class citizens and somehow pay back their debt, the mere opportunity cost of the time spent that they can never buy back is far greater than what any success can justify. Now, when it comes to the ones benefiting from this, I don't really know much. However, I do sense a few suspicious activities that are going on in the background, of which I'll mention a couple. You see, universities are paid upfront, regardless of any outcome, and loan systems profit from debt regardless of whether or not you're going to be landing a job that pays it back. So think about this for a second. None of the parties who amass wealth from this system are actually tied to the outcomes of the system. Like, none of them have any skin in the game. And that's really interesting. And then I mean, college is all about data and analytics. So why is it that the only numbers that are used as political and institutional wins are the enrollment and graduation rates? You get me? I mean, I'm positive that they can continue to track the graduates after the fact and see how do their lives improve due to the degree. Like, where do they end up in terms of employment, wage bracket, and real fulfillment and impact. But they don't track these numbers, or at least they don't show them. And don't get me wrong, I'm never a conspiracist. I'm not saying that this is done intentionally. However, it definitely is misleading and corrupt in my opinion. But then you may be asking, okay, all of this is fine. However, what can we really do about it? Now look, let me be very clear. The concepts of learning and teaching are not the problem. They're actually a must-have. That's literally how we evolve and thrive as societies. However, the problem is with how the education system is currently failing and becoming more unreliable than ever, especially when it comes to colleges. But don't forget that it took some of the smartest brains multiple decades to arrive here. So you can't expect me to be able to come up with a better alternative all by myself. I really can't do that. However, I think that it's worth wondering if there are any better alternatives for the traditional education system. But what I can do right now is to share my personal take about 4 different people at 4 different stages. And this is just my personal opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. First, if you're still in school, then I would say that you should definitely finish school. Not because your life depends on it, but because your life will generally be easier if you do finish school. To be honest with you, you could literally be treated as less if you don't finish school. That's just the way it is. Some things will never change. But also, we usually make our best friends in school. So at the end of the day, why not? However, even if you're at school and you are getting good grades, you should still be building skills on the side. And more importantly, you should be constantly looking to find what you are good at and what are your passions. Because this passion thing right here, you won't have time for afterwards, so you might as well do it while you're still at school. The second point is for someone who's about to start college. And this is where it gets tricky and you will have to really think things through before proceeding. Know that degrees are still worth it. It's not nothing. And also, not all degrees are built equal. There are degrees that you will have to study in order to be able to work in a certain profession, such as law and medicine and so on, up until now. And then there are other degrees that could really support you if you have already decided to work in a certain field. So you should think things through really and not take it for granted to study any degree out there. But also you should know that a degree on its own is definitely not enough anymore. Like any skill or experience that you learn now outside of a classroom is probably worth more than another year spent inside one. Thirdly, if you are already in college, then obviously don't just sit around waiting for graduation to start figuring things out. Start stacking high-value skills and experience right now while you're still in college. There's really no need to wait. Either it be starting your first job or starting your first business attempt. just do it. And my fourth message is basically for everyone, and especially those who are past college, including myself. Please know that the path to real growth is still wide open. It's just a bit different than what you're used to. It's now a specific, guided path that will actually lead you to your specific goals. No more sitting and learning for years before doing. You now learn as you go, by trying and failing and trying again. And since time is our most valuable asset, the smartest way to learn anything right now is by picking the exact skill you need and then finding someone who's already great at it and is offering help, to skip years of trial and error. And I'm not saying that this is a complete alternative for the education system. However, in my opinion, this is probably the closest thing that we have, and also this is the closest that we can get to buying back our time. But more importantly, let me know in the comments what you think is a better alternative, and I'll reply to you. And don't forget to subscribe, and see you again soon.